Well, welcome everybody to today's Smart Shippers Roundtable for the Chicago region. We're super excited to host this virtual roundtable on shipping. My name is Ron Lee. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer at 3G Pacejet. And today we're going to talk about better shipping. We'd like you to take away ideas and strategies to think about for your own shipping and fulfillment. And we're going to touch on a very broad range of topics. We're going to look at opportunities, we're going to look at problems, we're going to talk about leveraging technology to scale your business, integrating shipping services into your WMS and ERP systems or e-commerce systems. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, and we'll have a few shipper stories around to share along the way. I'm super excited also to let you know that we've got a great set of industry experts here, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a second. We have Sean McCarthy from UPS, the world's leading parcel carrier. We have Ruth Rosenstock from RF-SMART, software for mobile barcoding and inventory management. And we have Armendariz, the editor at Parcel Industry. So let's get quick introductions. Sean, you want to go first?
Gladly, thank you. I'm Sean McCarthy. I'm with the UPS Ready program. And the Ready program is the connective tissue between companies like Pacejet and our customers who need to ship with us. So our program enables that through technology and working with partners like Pacejet. So glad to be here. Been around UPS a while and looking to have a great conversation there.
Awesome, great. We're happy to have you here, Sean. Amanda, you want to go next? I'm going down my list here on the screen.
All right, sure. My name is Amanda Armendariz. I am the editor of Parcel Media. We are a free trade publication covering every aspect of the small shipment industry. So everything from order entry to warehousing to final delivery and returns.
Great. Glad to have you here, Ruth.
Great. So, yeah, great. My name is Ruth Rosenstock, and my role at RF-SMART is I manage the NetSuite partner management team. So we work with a gamut of partners across the board, Pacejet being one of them. And RF-SMART really focuses on the warehouse management solution. So think of the mobility in the warehouse, handheld, scanning, everything we do before it goes out the door via shipping.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we've got a lot of expertise here, a lot of experience, a lot of years out around shipping. So this should be a good conversation. We've got a little bit of housekeeping on today's session as we get going here. We're going to record it. We'll share it with you all at the end so you can share it with others on your teams if it's interesting or helpful. We're going to walk through a couple different questions and talk about some top level issues. And then we'll try to take a little bit of time towards the end to answer some of your questions. So if you have questions or thoughts you'd like us to address, just put them in the chat, and then we'll take a look at those when we get towards the end of the discussion. So topic number one, the first question we had in mind as we talked about this is, I think on a lot of people's minds, if you look at the macroeconomic situation out there, inflation, 8%, gas prices in Chicago last weekend were, above $6. It's top of mind for everyone right now. So the question is, how are shippers responding, and what are some of the strategies that they're looking at to deal with these changing economic times? So an interesting question, but a tricky one. Since I teed it up, I'll go first. I'm seeing, as I talk to our shippers and our customers, I see this renewed focus on back to the basics. And I look at it from two ways. One is cost precision and core efficiencies. So customers looking at their processes, looking at their operations and saying, are we as sharp in these areas as we think we should be? And two ideas came to mind for me as I was thinking about this discussion. One was the use of quoting. We have customers now that are paying much more attention to the precision of how they issue freight quotes. For example, out on their e-commerce site, if someone gets a quote, they want to make sure it can estimate the packaging, for example, so that it's a much sharper quote. They're less likely to lose money. The customer is happy with the price, that kind of thing. The other example that came to mind for me was consolidation. That has been an idea. Of course, it's been in the industry forever, but in this hectic period, the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years, it seemed to matter more to get the shipment out the door fast and get it to the customer quickly than it did to maybe reduce the number of shipments. And I'm starting to see more people think about consolidation on that front. So, Amanda, I'm going to go to you first. What are you seeing in the industry? What do you think people are thinking about right now amidst the changing times?
Yeah, along the lines of what you said, a lot of consolidation. More people are considering the whole implementing ship to store, for example. It's a lot more cost effective, obviously, to send 100 shipments to one spot rather than 100 shipments to 100 different locations. So that's really something that a lot of people have been pushing, both to save money on the shipping costs, and also if you can get your consumers, into a store, you're more likely to maybe get an extra sale, right? Something that they noticed that they weren't even aware they were looking for, but because they're in there anyway, picking up their shipment, that can add a little bit to the bottom line as well. Another thing is analyzing your packaging, especially if you have large, lightweight shipments that might be subject to dimensional weight charges. A packaging analysis could show you some ways that you could reduce those costs. Even if you still ultimately have to pay some, dim weight charges, if you can cut that even by 20%, that could help shippers a lot. And finally, we're seeing a lot of carrier diversification. Obviously, the big two, UPS and FedEx, are still rightfully so very popular and common to use. But maybe there's a small percentage of your customer base that could be better served by a regional carrier. So you divert 5% of your shipment volume to them. And that can save you some money too in the long run. So those are the big trends that I'm seeing from our readers.
Those are some great points. You made me spark the thought that for the stats last year, it was the first time, maybe you all remember it differently, but I saw the growth in e-commerce and the growth in retail, they about matched each other. Retail was slightly ahead of it. It's like, during COVID, it was e-commerce, everything was about all e-commerce. And then we came out of COVID and now we've got the revenge of retail, they're back. And figuring out how to ship retail and how to use techniques for, like you mentioned, zone skipping has suddenly been higher on everyone's list. Yeah. Sean, Ruth, what do you think? Any other thoughts on this topic?
So I think what Amanda said a lot is really important, which is around trying to optimize your packages, right? And like the dim weight one is always an interesting conversation, right? Because from a carrier perspective, those big lightweight packages take up space. And so if they're more condensed and packaged more properly, then it helps us and it helps the customer with the price. And so I think little things like that, while it might be easier maybe to have one box size for all your product, from a packaging standpoint, it's not the most efficient way to manage your costs on the back end and ensure, claims-free experiences for your customers and that sort of thing. So the little things like that are important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, obviously I'm speaking more before it actually goes out the door, but consolidation plays a big role. So a lot of discussions we have with people in their warehouses is, hey, we want to divide up our warehouse so we can consolidate this customer's inventory and this customer's inventory. So it goes out and it's more economical because we're doing one shipment instead of 5 or 10. It's interesting though, because you kind of hit something, Ron, just sort of back to the basics. And I always think that I think there's always a time, there's always something that shifts and we're like, let's go back to the basics. Like, why did we get to this level when we should be doing this? And when you look at, companies that ship and how they were shipping in the past is they were early on, like being a young business or even a small business, they were very conscientious about shipping costs and things like that. Granted, it may have been a manual kind of way of doing it, but I mean, they were always concerned about it. And then they grew and grew and grew. And some of these things got forgotten, right? So then they have to come back and crawl back and be like, what do we do? Like, what do we do right, over here? And then now, I mean, this is obviously pre-pandemic, but now we kind of look at post-pandemic, so to speak. And both Amanda and Sean touched this too, where it's like, hey, we need to go back and save some money because there's rising costs all over the economy, as you touched on, Ron. So let's go back to basics. But this time when we go back to basics, let's use technology and let's really kind of look at where we can be aware of what we're doing almost before we do it, so we don't hit these cost blogs, moving forward and stuff.
Yeah, Ruth, that's a really great point. It makes me think about, data-driven decisions, right? Mm-hmm. And really analyzing what they have going on in their operations, in their business, and then how can they make those incremental changes Some of the changes might be big and very impactful, but some of them might be small and still very impactful. And just last comment on this, the acceleration in the digital applications, has just, I know we saw it come out of the pandemic, but it has not stopped. It is the new starting place for anybody who wants to get into this area and move their product, engage with their customers, from demand generation all the way through fulfillment, pick, pack, shipping, returns, repeat customer, right? I mean, all of that is done with digital and technology now. It's amazing.
Yeah, agree.
That is a great point. That's actually a great segue to our next question. But what I love about that is if you think it feels hard to say this, 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, we were getting good at e-commerce. Most companies were getting good at e-commerce, but it forced our hand to get great at certain things like fast. You think companies didn't have this idea of as often shipping from a store, or bringing the product out and loading it into the back of your car, or letting you take the order in shoes, and all of the digital application of technologies that we had to figure out in 6 months or a year. Now we're at this point where the idea of digital transformation, the technology have all matured quite a bit just in the last 2-3 years to apply it. So I guess that's a long-winded to say our next topic we want to chat about was digital transformation. And what's interesting to me about that is it's time, it's kind of ripe for the shipping industry. You talked about that, Sean, where it's time where we can apply digital technologies more and more and more, but it means something different for everybody, it seems to. I looked up 2 different definitions when I was thinking about this discussion, and I saw one that said use of digital technology to drive efficiency, value, and innovation. I was like, okay, that's a good definition. I like that. And then I scrolled down and I'm like, oh, there's a totally different definition. It says create or modify business processes, culture, and customer experiences with digital technology. I'm like, well, that's a great definition too. So I guess the question is, what does digital transformation, what do you think is top of mind for shippers? And how does that fit with how your business thinks about it? I'm going to start with you, Sean, because UPS has been in the news a lot, new CEO, lots of positive stuff, lots of change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I do. Thanks for that. I think the second definition you gave was really, really interesting, that it's not just about the process changes, it's about the culture and the customer experience. And that's so true, even, especially here at UPS. We have a brand new CEO who's been around with us just over a year and a half, I guess. And, she's really come to us, it's Carol Tomei, she's come to us with a better, not bigger framework. And really that's about focusing on what we do best. And part of that is really providing the best digital experience for our customers, and supported by that UPS global smart logistics network that we've all come to know and love, right? And you can see the fruits of that a little bit in UPS.com. If you've gone on UPS.com in the last year, you'll see continual changes, improvement, and transformation there. And the tone of the conversation on UPS.com is more conversational, maybe a little less formal than you would have expected from UPS. And it's really talking directly, not just to the customers, but the SMB customers, the folks who really need the help to know where to go next. So we're doing it right there on UPS.com. We're doing it with partners like yourselves. You can even see in the culture side, that this better, not bigger framework helps us decide where we want to put our focus. We just announced a new Chief Digital and Technology Officer. So it's not just a new CTO, it's a new digital and technology officer. So that is just, really emphasizes right at the top that digital is important in what we do. And lastly, if you hadn't seen it, we're even delivering to SMBs in the metaverse now. So we're really embracing technology and digital and trying to, find new ways to engage with customers where they are and what they're doing.
That's pretty interesting. I had not known that about the metaverse. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see brown trucks driving around in there. Is that what I'm going to see?
That's exactly right.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, that sparked a thought for me. One of the Ruth, I think this will be right up your alley. One of the things I've been tracking, well, really for the last 10 years probably, is the transformation of business systems, core systems, ERP systems to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been clocking in at somewhere between 15 and 18, 20% every year for the last 5 or 7 years. And sometime last 3 years, it switched to cloud first. So a lot more companies are looking at moving their core business system to a cloud-based system. And it sort of puts you in a position as you do this digital transformation, you got to think about how to wire technologies together in a more networked way. So I'm just curious, Ruth, your thoughts on that, on cloud systems and integration and that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but prior to RF-SMART, I worked at NetSuite in the selling product in the product division for 10 years. So I was always well versed with NetSuite as a business platform, and then partners that connect into NetSuite. And really, what it's about is NetSuite's a fantastic business platform on a cloud, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and that whole like movement to the cloud. But the idea around partners like Pacejet or RF-SMART or UPS, and when we kind of look at that, they're connected to NetSuite because it's got an open platform. So some partners are built on the platform like RF-SMART, so can't interact without NetSuite. But then you've got other ones that are a little more agnostic, but they have a real-time integration. So the end result is that you're getting real-time data and real-time numbers and understanding of, hey, I need to do this because the system's telling me X, and we're in trouble if we don't do, Z. So this is a good thing, and that's the really good thing about NetSuite. When you look at the cloud movement, it's really interesting because so I started NetSuite in 2010, and then prior to that in 2008, there obviously was a recession. NetSuite was one of the only cloud companies that grew during that time. Most companies were using on-premise, maybe hosted solutions and things like that, probably more on-premise. So they had a bit of a growth. When you kind of fast forward now into what's happening, and yes, the pandemic and the change is, there's reasons why people are moving to the cloud faster than ever. Obviously, mobility. I mean, the pandemic, we had a big shift. I talked to people where people literally had to take desktops home at the height of the pandemic, which always, baffled me. But they didn't have the ability to sign into something, right, to actually keep their business running. So when we look at the last 2 years, that definitely made a move to the cloud where companies are thinking, I need some mobility. I need to sign on at home. I can't be in the office for obvious reasons. And then on top of that, the cost factor, like it's expensive to have on-premise systems or even sometimes hosted solutions because you've got DBAs that still have to manage that. You still have to manage upgrades. That's why when you kind of look at the whole picture between, companies like NetSuite, that connection, the total cost of ownership is much less, even though it's a subscription cost. When we look at partners like Pacejet and RF-SMART and then NetSuite combined, it's still cheaper because these things are happening in an automated fashion. You're always on, the latest and greatest. It's always updated. It's protected, from lots of different things that are kind of going out in the cyber world. So there's a lot of movement because of that. So cost is one of them, mobility is the other one where I see it, but that's why I think there's such growth, in the area, and it's easy to use. It's way easier to get live on a cloud solution than it is on, an on-premise solution. It takes years sometimes on an on-premise solution. I'm sure we've all experienced that in some fashion, but yeah, that's where I'm seeing it's just kind of those reasons.
I think those are great reasons, and you sparked the thought for me. One of the things that we've started to see happen, I think, is it's so much more affordable when you think about the total cost of ownership to deploy a cloud-based system. But I can't even imagine when I think about the connectivity that's required today to services like UPS and other services, trying to do it yourself with on-premise software and trying to go out and find and hire IT people to help you do it. When you're using a cloud system, it's our job to worry about it. We have to take care of that. It just needs to run like the electricity. You turn it on and it works.
Right.
That's probably one of the topics we want to touch on quickly. Sean, UPS Ready is your program, and it's a near and dear program to my heart because it's how we connect UPS into systems like NetSuite. talk a little bit about the program from your perspective. Why does it exist? What's it for?
Yeah, the program continues to expand and grow and really, be available to where the customers are. We try to meet the customers where they are, right? So I think about the fact that, customers can come to UPS directly and ship, right? We love that, and that's great. But there's so many other things they need to do in their business, right? And if they're going ahead and they're doing inventory management or order management or warehousing, what's the adjacent thing to that? It's shipping. So, our goal with the Ready program is to enable that shipping decision and the shipping execution, right? Getting that label and getting on the package. That's really what the focus already is. Now, are there other things that can be added on there, including tracking and returns? Absolutely. But the core is around shipping. And, when I think about that, it's really, really important to understand that this ecosystem that's out there, it's not just Pacejet, it's not just RF-SMART, it's not just NetSuite, it's everything and how it connects. We mentioned NetSuite earlier, and NetSuite is another Ready partner. They have a direct connection with UPS and they have a native integration. But when things get complex, they go, hey, Pacejet, can you help us out over here with this customer? And then Pacejet steps up the integration and gives that next level that they need. RF-SMART integrates in on your side, and there's probably 2 or 3 or 4 other ones that an individual customer could be connecting with, other partners, where we just want to be available and kind of, again, be that connective tissue in that web that makes it secure for the customer and easy for the customer to do business and connect with UPS where they are. So that's really how I see Ready.
Well, I think that's I love that phrase, connective tissue. I told you when we were preparing, I was going to steal that because I love that way of referring to it. But I think part of that evolution of using programs like UPS Ready is we are seeing that to get those great customer experiences, shipping is not something that you just leave in the warehouse. It's not an after the fact type of issue anymore. It's not what I sometimes would think of as a slot machine integration, right? You don't just crank the orders in, ship, and crank them out. You need to connect rates up front. You need to connect tracking into customer service because your team wants to know when it arrived. How much is it going to cost up front? Do I want ground or next day? You got it. So we think of the connectivity as it's going to be constantly maturing to touch these systems across the entire breadth of the ERP. And that's, I think, one way that companies are going to get greater efficiency here over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And I think of the physical movement of that package and that good, and I align it with the digital movement, right? So that value chain from time it's sourced and customer data generation all the way through, all of those have digital connections. And different companies provide expertise in those different areas. And sometimes UPS is alongside them, sometimes we're not. But we try to be wherever it's necessary and where we can add value in that whole process.
Yeah. And that's what's important is that no matter the ERP platform and cloud ERP platform, it's having those key partners and key experience around that is so important because the ERP platform can't be the professional in everything. When you buy a Mercedes, you're not getting Mercedes speakers, you're getting Bose speakers because they're the professionals, right? So when you look at shipping and when you look at warehouse management or an array of other solutions that connect into ERPs, those are the professionals, right? And they've got years of experience and they know what to expect. And then they have that seamless connection into the ERP business platform. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yep, that's perfect. Well, that's great. I think, and it was good we're touching on customer experiences because that's a great segue to our next topic, which is customer experience. And we seem to be in a period where competition is intensifying, the pressures on your business are intensifying. So you got to figure out how can you differentiate yourself from the competition? You're a shipper, you have maybe a manufacturer, maybe a distributor. How can you create an experience that's better for your customers? And I thought I would start with the one story that's stuck in my mind. It's a Chicago customer of ours, Chicago Music, and they're a joint customer, RF-SMART. Actually, it's 3 ways here: UPS, RF-SMART, Pacejet. They're all users of our solution. And what I loved about their use of technology, their first wave of implementation was efficiency driven. They got to the point where they wanted to make the warehouse more usable by their staff more effectively, cut down travel time, things like that. And they attacked reduction in misships, right? They cut down the number of shipments that go the wrong way, because you could eat margin for 4 orders just by having to ship a replacement and have product come back and all that. So I think it was a great use of technology to optimize it. But then when you think about customer experience, when I visited their warehouse, 2 things came to mind. One is I was questioning my life choices that I never learned to play the guitar, because when you see all their guitars, it's just very cool. But the second was, in the warehouse, they had people actually playing the instruments as they were preparing them to pack them up and ship them. And they had a little checklist where they would go through and make sure that everything was perfect, so that when someone gets the guitar and they pull it out of the box, they can play it right away. And there's not that disappointment that you got something and maybe it was not quite right. And it just seemed to me that's such a great step to create a great customer experience right out of the get-go. So what do you all think? Amanda, you got any thoughts on this, on customer experience and competitiveness?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, customer experience, like you mentioned, is a great way to differentiate yourself from your competition. And it can be kind of hard sometimes to figure out what exactly, you should focus on. And obviously, it depends on what you're shipping and what your business model is. But a lot of our shippers are really looking at the fact that the unboxing experience is becoming a much bigger thing, right? Like, I feel even 10 years ago, maybe you got a shipment and it was like, great, it's here. All you cared about was the product, right? Now people are very much more, thankfully, into, environmental sustainability. So they're going to look at their packaging. They're going to say, oh, is this, did I get a little tiny, package of earbuds in this huge box? And that will negatively impact their view of the retailer, and maybe they won't use them again. Or even just little things, again, depending on your business size, sometimes people put in customized thank you notes, just a thank you for your order, things like that. So even if you can't do a lot of people want to be like Amazon in terms of shipping speed, right? Same day or next day. And sometimes the organization just doesn't have the budget for that. But so it's little ways like this where you can stand out and, usually keep people coming back because of these little touches that they may not get somewhere else.
Yeah, those are great points. I've seen a lot more use in personal orders that I get, but also with some of our customers, of QR codes, easy things in the packaging, so that when you open it up, if you have a question, you don't have to go type in a complicated address. You just get your phone out and scan the QR code, and it has a video that explains it. So there seems to be much more attention to those little details on the customer experience front. Ruth, what do you think?
Yeah, Ron, to take that. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to say something. I was just, you made me kind of think. I mean, there's story after story. Like, I mean, I love the whole Chicago Music Exchange, and it's interesting because we were recently on site there last week as well, and it's such a good story. And I mean, I kind of have story after story in my head about experience and things like that. But I think also, when you look at organizations that take advantage of technology to better their business, there's another step that they have to take too. It has to be kind of easy technology or easier technology, because what's going to happen is when they change technology, I mean, that's a big undertaking, right? It's almost like changing the foundation of your house a little bit. Plus you've got all these other things that are there to complete their business. We have to make it easy for them, right? So when you're selecting the right solution, you want it to make sure they can transform properly, because they still have to service that customer and hopefully get better at servicing that customer after they've changed. And I think about, Peace Coffee, which is a customer of RF-SMART. They, one of the big things for them, and especially right now because the labor market is really weird, like there was an article in Forbes that talked about this a little bit, but it's hard to get people. Doesn't matter what the business is, it's hard. And it's a little odd because companies still need to manage and give that customer experience, right? So if you've got a software that is easy to move into and easy to learn from, then you can be that much more successful. And that's something that Peace Coffee did. Is their big thing is they needed in this case, they needed a warehouse management system. But the big thing with them is they needed it to be easy, because they didn't have time to spare to be cumbersome and all these, different learnings and months and months of transition. They needed to get trained, get going, so they could maintain the shipments out to their customers and enhance that customer experience. So, those are things that they found. So I think when we're looking at technology and organizations to better their business, the research goes around what's the easiest one for me to transform to and change to and quickly, so I can maintain customer service. And in my market, maintain being competitive, because they don't want to lose their competitive footprint, right? And aside from software technology competitiveness, but I mean, the company you're working with doesn't want to lose their competitive footprint. So things need to be quick and easy for them as well.
And I'll add another word to that. We think about easy, but not only do you have to make it easy, it needs to be a useful solution, right? And useful could be as simple as it fits my need, it's meeting my need, or it could be useful in that it exceeds my expectation. I didn't expect that. Or it's something I don't have to do because we as partners have done the heavy lifting. You talked about, having us do the technology, or you do the technology, right? So for UPS anyways, it's, we build into the network that those things that make it easy and useful. So whether that's fastest ground ever, we've improved our time in transit, and it's been reflected on the time in transit results. Amanda, I'm sure, and others have seen that. We have our My Choice program that starts to create that personalization for the consignee, for the customer's customer, right? The shipper's customer. And so by having those tools in place, it gets to that next thing that's really out there that we're starting to see and have been seeing, is this hyper personalization. Like, how do you take information? How do you then take experiences and that customer experience and take it to the next level and make it specific, so it is easy and it is useful, not just for the shipper, but also for the customer's customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Sean. That reminded me. I had forgotten to say this when you were bringing this up, Ruth, about the adoption of the digital technology. The other piece we've seen that's super important is making it incremental. Mm-hmm. That you can make it approachable so that you can start with a foundation, but have in mind that you're going to be changing this constantly. You're going to be constantly saying, well, okay, we're going to use this set of UPS class of services today, but then tomorrow we're going to start doing international. So I better plan for that, and I better be ready for that process. And it shouldn't be these big mountains every time you have to go through it. It should be tweaks, additional improvements, incremental along the way, because then you get more and more value, and you're being almost the software definition of agile. You're on the ground watching what's happening, and now you're tuning the tech, to make better improvements.
Yeah.
I think those evolutions are very important.
Yeah, and again, when you go back to the whole cloud and adoption and stuff like that, cloud makes that very easy. I mean, yes, you've got your initial move, but your point, Ron, maybe the next day is, now we need to do international. Our business is growing, so we need to adopt this part of UPS. Or the next thing we need to do is here in the warehouse, or we need to really define LTL shipments or whatever it is. But those are little optimizations that take place after you've made that move. And I can tell you, like, just from experience, cloud is one of the easier ways to do that than on-premise, because it takes a little bit, it takes longer. Or the olden days. This is called the olden days. That's gone.
The olden days. The old times.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I mean by useful, right? It's we can give somebody this incredible package of everything, but all they need is just this one little part for that incremental change, that new experience they're trying to create. And so it's really important that we keep that in mind for what is it that the customer really needs. Not that it's just easy, but is it useful and applicable for the specific need they have at that time, and moves them towards, more engagement.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a super important point. It jogged my memory that one of the things in talking with our clients, we find quite often that not only do people have unique ways of shipping in their business, even though you would think it should be the same, exactly the same for everybody. It's not necessarily the same. There's unique steps, like what I mentioned with Chicago Music. Others have that, but it's not only across business types, but that personalization you touched on, Sean, within their business. I've yet to meet a company that does all of their shipments exactly the same way, regardless of customer size, regardless of geography, regardless of product. Typically, there's some kind of programmatic organization of those to think about the end customer and say, well, I want to do it a little bit different here because for that customer, it's more important to get it there fast, or I've got to make sure I charge to their account, or sometimes to their account, sometimes to my account, or the documentation needs to be a little bit different. So that personalization and getting in a position where you can use the technology to enable it at scale, back to your point, Ruth, so that you're down on the floor and you don't have to worry, I got to get this order out the door. Does it help me deliver a personalized, good experience without a lot of work? Make it valuable and easy.
Yeah.
All right, great. Any other thoughts on this? We'll move on to our last question. All right, cool. Well, this one it's a funny one to me a little bit because it's tough to even think about. We're right in the heat of summer. It's like 90 degrees outside, and we talked about the peak season coming here in the holiday season, right? So I guess it's our lot in life to worry about the holidays in the middle of June, but here we are. So the question really is, with the holiday rush coming this year, we've got some different pressures. What do you think we should be worried about or preparing as a shipper? What do we need to be doing now to be ready for the peak season that we're going to start seeing in 3 months? Who wants to go first? Sean, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my answer to that is quite simple. It's start communicating and communicating early. And that means talk to your salesperson on the UPS side, let them know what your plans are, and try to make sure that there's alignment. Make sure your warehouse team knows what's going on. Make sure that are there changes that coming in your shipping software or with what Pacejet integrations you have? And we know a lot of folks freeze their technologies during that time, right? So in order to freeze, you're going to be prepared. So if you're going to make changes, now's the time to be making those changes. So early communication is what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Sean. And Ruth, you made me think coffee. And Intelligentsia was the Chicago-based customer that we were thinking about coming to this session. They really kind of line up with this because when they were implementing, they paid really close attention to the efficiency from a scalability perspective, because they are subject to the kind of burst in volume you would expect during a peak season. And so they did some simple things, seemingly simple things, but like making sure that you have a combined packing list and shipping label, so it's super easy to apply it as you're doing a shipment and process it efficiently. So that came to mind to me. Any come in mind to you for efficiencies, or what do you think about this peak season prep? What do you do?
Yeah, for sure it happens now, even if not a little bit before now. But I mean, and now more than ever, because I think, this year, I think it's going to peak quite a lot just because we had so many changes over the last couple of years and things like that. But I think when it comes to sort of warehouse and technology and things like that is, Sean made the point too, if you're going to make a change, make it now so you're ready, because you want to adopt that change. So let's just suppose it's sort of an optimization change. Now we're going to adopt this step here, whatever that is. Do it now, talk about it now, communicate about it now, get everybody on board so you can start making those changes now. Get ready during the summertime, whether that is bringing in, mobility into your warehouse or adding on shipping techniques or whatever it is. Do it now, because throughout the summer you can get that done. And then by the time that peak season hits, it's, you're ready to go. And if you are making a change, like if you're looking at cloud solutions, you're not on a cloud solution today, you still have time. Same thing, because again, there can be some rapid deployment with that. So you can start now, get ready, and then be ready for the rush, and then optimize more after that as well. So same kind of thing, I would do that. And then if you're on systems, Think about ways of, use the data that you're getting from those systems. If you're using everything now and you feel like you've got everything in place, use that data and really understand how you can better your business during those peak seasons. So there's all sorts of data you get around shipping or inventory levels, or, buying seasons are big things too, right? So buying's a little bit different for companies, and they really need to kind of look at shipping times around that. So when it gets into the warehouse, then they can resell it and obviously ship it back out again.
Yeah, your comments on data, both you both have talked about that. I think now is a great time to do not only pilot programs, like you talked about, a small program on a small subset of orders and get in position to scale it. But if we go back to this idea of data-driven decisions and sort of the basics, now would be a great time to inspect your operations for those mistakes that get magnified when your volume spikes. So are your dimensions way off and you're getting dim charges? Are your weights off by a pound? Might not seem like much, but when it's 5 orders versus 50 orders, suddenly it's a problem. Are you getting address correction problems?
Mm-hmm.
That is a fee per package if you get it wrong. So, kind of analyzing them now while you've got a little bit of breathing room, so that when you get into the hot season and you're 3x or 5x the volume, you really don't want to be messing with that stuff with it.
Yeah. Ron, I think it's always important to think about this, because I think some customers miss the fact about scalability, right? That what I'm doing now works for what I have going on now in the environment I'm in and the amount of orders I have. But what do you really think that scale is going to be? And it's not just how is UPS changing or Pacejet or RF-SMART changing during peak. It's also how your business is changing, and is the structure you have in place going to be scalable enough for where you see your business during that time? We do that all the time. I mean, we've been talking about peak since January 1st for this year, right? Since Christmas, day after Christmas, we might take a couple of days off, right? But we've been talking about it all year long. And that scalability for us, that's what builds that infrastructure. And it's really important to think about that in individuals' business as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. We do that too as a software company, right? You'll think about what do our customers need and where do we see the trends going, because it's data driven, and what do we need to add on? So of course our customers do the same. It's a very good point, Sean.
Kind of pressure testing those limits, like what can I really do at scale?
And even to your point on the limits, now's a good time for people capacity. As hard as it is to get people in the peak season, people are more likely to use, staff augmentation, temporary workers to come in and help them. Well, now would be a good time to do a little bit of pressure testing of that and make sure your systems are easy enough to learn that person you're only going to have for 6 weeks or 4 weeks can come in and really adopt it and be productive, or at least for the types of work that you had in mind. Yeah, because that's a super, it's hard to find people. You better start pressure testing your connections, your relationships to the people, and your ability to ramp them, especially in a multilingual world and with labor in a tight supply.
Mm-hmm. Ron, if I could, last thing I would say is, as you're thinking about peak, it doesn't end with getting the package out the door and delivered. Returns has become such an important part of the peak season and the immediate time after peak. And there's so many things people can do now to think about that returns process to make it easier, especially as, again, you scale up during that time. So put some thought into the returns process and procedures that you have in place.
That's a really good
experience for the customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Really
Dan, I didn't want to leave you left out. Have you had any thoughts on the industry side? Do you see anything that the buzz on the wire, so to speak? What are people saying about the end of the year right now? Are they nervous? Have they got particular worries?
It's kind of a combination. I think, to piggyback off what Sean and Ruth said, early communication is key. I mean, that was something we saw hands down last peak season. If you reached out to your carrier early, and by early I mean now, or maybe like Ruth said, even a couple weeks ago, and just open up the conversation, say, hey, I think our volume is going to increase by X% from November to the day after Christmas. Can you accommodate that? Maybe looking for backup carriers just in case, just to diversify your carrier portfolio during this peak busy season. People who were proactive reported last year not being quite so terrible. Whereas the people who just kind of assumed that peak season would be like it always was, busier, but manageable, they were the ones sometimes left out in the cold with, who's going to pick up our packages? They don't have the capacity for us anymore. That sort of thing. So I think as long as you're prepared, this year should not be too bad. And then on the warehousing side of things, to kind of go off of what you were saying in terms of staffing, one of the biggest things that I have seen, even pre-COVID, but especially now, I talk to a lot of distribution center managers when we have our annual parcel forum. We often tour different DCs. And one thing that managers are always saying is be flexible and creative in your hiring practices. So a lot of times, warehouses sometimes want to stick to there's a day shift and a night shift, or, 3 8-hour shifts or whatever. But there was one DC that we toured, and I wish I could remember which one because I would give them credit, but I don't. But they were having a staffing problem. So they got creative. They started advertising that they wanted to hire, for example, stay-at-home parents who just wanted to work from 9 to 2, or whatever the school hours are, right? They didn't want to have to deal with childcare. They didn't want to have to deal with paying for before or after school care. So they created this, granted it was a short shift, but still it helped get stuff done. Or they partnered with local high schools to get high school students, especially seniors who maybe want something for their college applications or that sort of thing. They hired them just for maybe from 3 to 8 p.m. after school. And so it wasn't like these standard normal full-time shifts, but it bridged the staffing gap. And I feel like, and again, that was pre-COVID. And so I feel like that'd be even more relevant now as something to consider. So you're not sitting there on Black Friday thinking, how are we going to get all these orders out the door?
That is a great point. We had that's a great idea too. We had almost I would call it an unreal sort of customer experience during the COVID period. So we had a customer of ours, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I should remember this operation, but they had a pretty decent flow of orders even during COVID, but they had an exposure. Someone had tested positive in the warehouse. And they were like, well, what do we do? Now we can't have any of the people that were out in the warehouse. They have to go home. So they all went home, and the managers who have never shipped before in their life came out into the warehouse, and some of the shippers who were just at home quarantining helped them remotely process shipments while the managers did all the physical work out in the warehouse. And they were able to kind of turn on a dime and keep supporting their customers. And it was all because they have cloud systems. And it's a lot easier to do that. So to your point, if you think a little differently, you may be able to add labor into your workforce to handle some of your tasks in a way that you didn't think about before, because you've got these options with systems that work anywhere for it. So
really good idea. Yeah.
Other thoughts on this topic, preparing for the end of the year, anything else? Okay. All right, well, coming up on almost 10 minutes here before the end of the session, I wanted to just give a chance here for everyone to provide any final thoughts. But before we do that, I want to see what questions we might have that came in on the chat channel here. I had one from that came in previously, which I think we've already answered, saving, ideas for smaller businesses to save on packaging and shipping in particular was one of the questions. I think we had two people asked about that coming in. So I'll let anyone who wants to answer that. My quick answer would be that we've touched on a lot of techniques here. If you haven't looked at your current use of packaging, I would encourage you to do it. Just look at a recent shipment history and see how much dead space is in the packages. You may be surprised. If you haven't done an analysis of ship tos and orders and seen historical opportunities for consolidation, you might be surprised that there's more there than you think. So those would be two ideas I had on just real tactical ways to save on shipping costs and packaging costs. Anyone have anything they would add on that topic?
I would add something about, thinking about your commitments to your customers, your SLAs, right? And you don't have to you get an order and you don't have to send that order out the door immediately, right? You talk about consolidations. You have to think of the opportunity in that time frame to still meet or exceed your commitments to the customer, but look for those opportunities for consolidation or efficiency or whatever it might be. So use that whole time that's available to you if you can.
Great idea.
Yeah,
Other?
I agree. No, I mean, I agree with Sean and both what you were saying, Ron, earlier as well.
Okay. Well, let's see. In terms of final thoughts, we can go around the horn here a little bit. Who wants to go first? Ruth, you want to go?
Sure, why not?
Pick a winner.
So, I mean, the only thing that I would kind of think of is take the time to understand your business, understand where technology can play a role positively, and don't think you have to take everything on at once. You can go slowly, of course, and then always be on your toes. And what I mean by that is just always expect change in the environment. I mean, I think we obviously experienced that by 1,000 degrees during the pandemic, but I think this is also a new way of how we're going to be, is that there will be things that are going to come up, and the best we can do as businesses is be prepared and know what's going on in our businesses with automation and other things out there that can help give us the tools to make real-time decisions versus late decisions and costing the business and things like that.
Great. I think that's great advice. Amanda, you want to go? Any final thoughts for the audience here?
Yeah, I would just reiterate again the point of early communication, like we touched on, reaching out to your partners, whoever they may be, whether it's your carrier or your warehouse manager, whoever. It's important to keep the lines of communication open, because it's very easy to get sucked into, we each have our own jobs and we assume that these jobs are working together, and they might not be. So especially now with all of the complexities with COVID and increase in volume, just keep the lines of communication open and make sure you're keeping everyone on their aware of what is happening.
Keep talking. Okay. Sean, what do you think? Any final thoughts you'd leave people with?
Yeah, I think the last thing that I'd like to say is that, first of all, thanks for letting us be part of this, Ron.
Yeah.
It's awesome, and team, it's good to have these conversations. But I think for the customers, it's, avoid the chaos cost, right? Look to the experts that really know how to do their business, and you do yours. Each of us have incredible teams behind us at our companies, and let us do the heavy lifting for you, unintended. And you do your job and market to your customers and grow your business and give the experience to your customers that you want for your business, and let us help you do that.
I think that's great advice. Well, for my part, I would say in a time of accelerating change that we're going in, I think sometimes it's good to take a step back and take a breath and look at the fundamentals. Better basics, your core. Look at your core pick, pack, ship process. Look at how you commit shipment services and cost to your customers. Look at all these things, and you might be surprised at the basics. If you get better at the basics, it's like anything. Once you're really good at the core pick, pack, ship process, and you're really good at quoting, how long is it going to take? What is it going to cost? Then you can suddenly accelerate your ability to get personalized service. And those foundations are so good that you're not going to worry about spikes as much. You're not going to worry about unique requirements that come from customers, because at least your foundations are really solid. And I think that, plus all of the panelists here have talked about technology. I've been surprised. I've been in enterprise software a long time, probably tell from the gray hair, but it has changed in the last 5 years, probably more than the previous 15, in terms of ability to connect and wire your business for success. And I think, when you look at what struggles you may be going through right now, it doesn't have to be this hard. There are some new approaches you can take that if you haven't looked at, even in 2 years, pre-COVID, now would be a great time to start looking, whatever type of software technology you want to apply in your business. I think it's a great time to look at that. Well, we're right almost up at the time here. A little reminder on our virtual web roundtable series. Well, I certainly appreciate all of our speakers here on the panel. It was great to have you with us on this session. It was a fun conversation. We covered a lot of ground. But Sean, Amanda, Ruth, thank you so much. For everyone attending, appreciate your time and attention today. We have two other sessions here you can see on the screen coming up, a similar type format. Feel free to have others involved. If we've missed any of your questions, I think I saw one coming at the last minute here that we didn't have a chance to address. We'll definitely address that via email and follow up. We'll also provide a recording to this session that to all the recipients, so you can share it with your teams. And again, learn more about the solutions for all of the panelists here at ups.com, at RF-SMART, or at pacejet.com as well. We all would welcome a chance to chat with anyone on anything we can help you with. So with that, I think we'll wrap up today's session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.